This tutorial is for 1st grade, Module 6, Lesson 25. In this lesson, we're going to use the read, draw, write process and tape diagrams to help us solve word problems. The first problem says Kara wrote 3 poems. She wrote 7 fewer than her sister Emily. How many poems did Emily write? Well, the first thing we're going to do is write an answer statement with a blank for our final answer. This gives us the goal of the entire problem. If I go back to the question, the final question says, how many poems did Emily write? So that will be the focus of our answer statement. We will say Emily wrote blank poems. Now let's fill in the labels on our tape diagrams. First thing I want to decide is who's going to have the shorter tape and who's going to have the longer one. Well, if Kara wrote 3 poems and she wrote fewer than Emily, then that means Emily will have the larger tape and Kara will have the shorter one. So we'll put Emily's name next to the longer one and Kara next to the shorter one. And again, we need to find out how many poems Emily wrote. Well, let's go back to what we know. We know that Kara wrote 3 poems. So we'll show that in her tape. So her tape is this box right here. The dotted box is showing me the difference between Kara's tape and Emily's tape. Well, if they had written the same amount, then Emily would have 3 in this part of the tape too. But Kara wrote 7 fewer than Emily. So that means the rest of this tape would be 7 because that shows the difference between the 2 tapes. Kara wrote 7 fewer. So what I really need to do is combine the 7 fewer with the 3 original, and that would tell me that Emily wrote 10 poems. And that makes sense. If I have 10 poems for Emily and Kara's amount is 7 fewer, then that leaves 3 for Kara. And one possible number sentence would be the 3 poems that Kara wrote plus the 7 would give us the amount that Emily wrote, which is 10. And our final answer statement says Emily wrote 10 poems. So again, that dotted line shows us the difference between the amounts of poems that the girls wrote, and we can look at this as a number bond. So if we know that Kara wrote 3 and that was 7 fewer than Emily, then the whole for Emily would be 10. Let's look at another question. This one says Maria used 15 beads to make a bracelet. Maria used 5 more beads than Kim. How many beads did Kim use to make her bracelet? And again, we'll start with a number statement. The question says how many beads did Kim use to make her bracelet? So we'll say Kim used blank beads to make her bracelet. Now we'll decide who has the longer tape. It says Maria used 15 beads and Maria used 5 more than Kim. That means Maria has the longer tape. So we'll put her name for the first one and Kim for the second one. It also says that Maria used 5 more beads than Kim. And that dotted box is showing that difference between the 2 tapes. For this one, I'm actually going to draw circles representing the beads so we can look at using that picture form of the tape diagram as well. So let's see, if she used 5 more beads than Kim, I'm going to draw those 5 first. Because again, this represents the difference between the 2 tapes. So the difference between the 2 would be 5. We also know that Maria used 15 beads in all. That means I need 10 more beads for Maria. And once again, if they had used the same number of beads, the tapes would be the same size. They would both be this size. So this tape then needs to be 10 beads because it's the same amount as Maria's after we take out the 5 more beads, or the difference between the 2. So that tells us that Kim used 10 beads to make her bracelet. And one number sentence I could use would be the 15 that Maria made minus the 5 more that she made in comparison to Kim. and that means that Kim made 10 beads. Question number 3 says Peter drew 19 rocket ships. Rose drew 5 fewer rocket ships than Peter. How many rocket ships did Rose draw? And we'll start by writing our answer statement. Since the question is how many rocket ships did Rose draw, we'll say Rose drew blank rocket ships. And now let's label our tape diagram. We'll decide who has the longer tape first. Since Peter drew 19 and Rose drew 5 fewer, we know that Peter will have the longer tape and Rose will have the shorter one. And we also know that Peter had a total of 19 rocket ships. Rose drew 5 fewer, so this dotted box shows the difference between the two amounts. So 5 fewer. And again, if we think of this in terms of a number bond, I know that the 5 fewer and the total that Rose actually drew would be equal to the 19 that Peter drew. So if we think in terms of a number bond, 5 and what number would equal 19? Well, that answer would be 14. So Rose drew 14 rocket ships, which is 5 less than the 19 that Peter drew. So I'll fill that in for my answer. Rose drew 14 rocket ships, and we got that by taking the total that Peter drew minus the difference between the two tapes, and that gave us 14 for Rose. Let's look at one more question. This one says, during the summer, Ben watched 9 movies. Lee watched 4 more movies than Ben. How many movies did Lee watch? We'll start with our answer statement, and we'll say Lee watched blank movies. Now let's fill in our tape diagram. So we know that Ben watched 9, and that Lee watched 4 more than Ben. So we'll give Ben's name to the smaller tape. Since Lee watched more, his tape will be larger. Okay, we also know that Ben watched 9 movies, so we'll put that in. And we know that Lee watched 4 more movies than Ben. So the part of Lee's tape that's more than Ben is here. So we'll say that's 4 movies. Now, if the tapes were the same size, then this portion of the tape would be 9 as well. So we're going to put that in. So that's 9. And then now we just need to figure out, well, how many did Lee watch? All I have to do is add my 2 portions of the tape together. 9 plus 4 is 13. And that means that Lee watched 13 movies. And that's 4 more than the number of movies that Ben watched. Our number sentence then is the 9 that Ben watched plus the 4 more, which gives us 13 movies in all. So you can see how the tape diagrams give a visual representation of the story problems and give the students a strategy to work through each problem.